Sorry about the lateness, everybody. I was just coming back from the gym, and I needed to eat something before I hopped in to chat with you all this evening. I think that might be enough of this. Let me take down the shield now that people are here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of The Joy of Game Mastering. I am your host, Alex Thomas, and tonight we are discussing a very exciting topic. We are talking all about the secrets, the very important Game Master secrets to running games for parties that are smaller than usual. A lot of people tend to think that 4 to 6 players is the sweet spot for running games, but not everybody has the chance to wrangle that many players. Scheduling can be a problem. There can be issues of not having enough gamers in your group. There could be a problem with people not wanting to play the particular kind of game that you're running. Or you have an event at a convention that you're running where not everybody showed up. It didn't sell out, or people dropped at the last minute. There's all sorts of reasons that you might be running a smaller group. Good evening, everybody. Salute from Brazil. Renato, good to see you. Ken, hello. Learn Music, hello. Rebel Moose, hello. David Young, hello. Hello, Nate. Hello, David Bullock. Everybody is here. Yeah. But yeah, we're going to be talking about how to run events or adventures for parties of 3 or fewer. 3 is a pretty good party size. I will say that 3 is... You're still in the ballpark of a 4 to 6 player game. So with 3, there's a little bit less work that you have to do, but if you're running for 1 or 2 players, things can be a little different. So thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. We'll go ahead and dive into the topic. As you have questions, please feel free to sprinkle them in. Pepper Ronan is here, Red 5, standing by. Gold Leader standing by. So, small parties. This is any situation where, and this could even be if you have people who just can't show up for this week's adventure and you don't want to delay. But there are a number of things on your end that you can do to make your life a lot easier as a game master dealing with a smaller party. A lot of it comes from adventure design and character design, especially in Mutants and Masterminds. I encourage you, as you are developing adventures for your smaller party, to look at situations that can optimize the skills and powers of the characters that you are bringing to bear for that particular party. You want a lot of opportunities for them to be really cool, doing stuff that... All right, sorry, let me start over again. So, when you're building characters for a smaller party, that's sort of where it begins. With character concepts, you want to make sure that your players have a lot of options to do things that affect a lot of characters. You sort of run into the same problem that villains run into with action economy, where there are 6 players who show up and 1 villain who has to do a bunch of stuff. So the easiest way to ensure your players don't feel overwhelmed is to take things like the takedown advantage and ensure that you incorporate a lot of minions in the event. There are things like area of effect. There are things like multi-attack. There are a lot of different things that you can build directly into the characters to increase their amount of actions per turn, just from a rules as written point of view. I also encourage you to consider thinking about increasing their action economy. If you have a smaller party, perhaps they get 2 rounds worth of actions that they could take, and they get 2 different initiative counts to help offset some of the difference between having a bunch of villains and 1 or 2 players. Other things to consider when you're creating these characters and giving them free ranks in the sidekick advantage or free ranks in the minion advantage, something that allows them to equip themselves, sort of like when you're thinking like classic duo, Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. Skeets is there too. Skeets is a wonderful... I'd call Skeets a sidekick more than a minion, but that is a free additional set of actions on the player's side to do things like assessment or support actions like healing or anything that can ensure that the players don't feel bogged down not being able to accomplish everything they want to accomplish. You could also allow your players to run more than one hero at a time if you're interested. If you and your group are comfortable with having one player play two characters, and you think that they're comfortable enough with the acting portion of that to pull that off, that's another fun thing that you can do. Yeah, a lot of it comes down to character creation from the onset. I do have some optional rules that I work with occasionally when I have smaller groups, similar to the challenge point system for our villains, where villains who are by themselves and are intended to be sort of like mastermind, big boss kinds of villains will give additional free hero points to do interesting actions with. They get a reserve based on how many heroes they're going to go up against, and you can modify that to work for players as well. So you can make it so that they have a pool of these hero points that are separate from their ordinary hero points that allow them to take an extra action or edit a scene for free or come up with some sort of advantage for themselves. Maybe it's a use of one of their powers each round in addition to give them an extra standard action or to give them an extra move action. And I encourage you during all of this process to be working with your players and communicating with them why, what kind of story do we want to tell with these heroes? Because there are tons of superhero stories with only a couple of characters in it. There's Batman and Robin. Superman and Batman is another good team up, the world's finest stuff. Iron Fist and Luke Cage. There are plenty of duos who cover each other's bases and are still effective groups of heroes. The other thing, make sure everybody is building their character together so that you know what role each character is going to fulfill. Luke Cage is going to be a tank. He's going to be super strong. Iron Fist is going to be good for taking out minions and things like that. Divvy up roles between the characters and make sure that they're able to cover what everybody needs to be able to do. Be a little more lenient with arrays that have a number of power options. Also, I hope you guys are still chatting because I haven't seen the chat in a little while, and I hope it's not on my end. Make sure it's not just Restream being silly. Yep, Restream's being silly. That's okay. Give me just a second. I'll open a separate tab so I can see chat because chat is not chatting. Okay, good. Oh, hi, Claude. Good to see you. Ken, what do you think are the types of adventures that would be better for small groups over large ones? These are great questions. Adventure design for a smaller group, you want to be looking at adventures that focus on one or two powerful villains instead of like a legion of villains or, a Suicide Squad worth of villains. You want to make sure that there's an even match between the characters, similar to when you're building encounters in general for Mutants Masterminds, but adventures that focus on one key villain who's trying to do something cool. Sort of think anytime Mr. Freeze is trying to do something to rescue Nora, that is a perfect duo-size adventure. Also, you generally want to make things more... You generally want to make sure that things are consolidated. So you don't want to deal necessarily with a natural disaster that takes place over a wide area. Like, you don't want to be dealing with the whole state when you only have two characters or one character there to solve the problem. I find that street level games are awesome for smaller parties. So thinking down and sort of, thinking like a Defenders level or a Heroes for Hire level or a Batman level. Even a Spider-Man level, I think, is awesome. Alternatively, you could, if you have a small party, you could have one player who is just playing a supervillain who's trying to be the mastermind. That could be a really fun campaign if you have a small party. Batman and Superman took down Darkseid by themselves. They sure did. I would argue that version of Darkseid is probably a little less powerful than the version of Darkseid that fights the Justice League. I know that's sort of don't be afraid to tailor things that way. So if you do want to incorporate a larger villain like an Omega or something, don't be afraid to take them down a couple power levels. There is a momentum in storytelling where the players sort of set the tempo, and it's up to you to modify things as necessary. Yeah, Spider-Man foes are really dangerous, so a duo totally works with them. Miles and Peter are a great spider duo. David Bullock says, is tie into the legacy characters? Yeah, you can certainly incorporate additional NPCs who function as patrons or as even additional combat characters. I always hesitate to advise people to run a DMPC, but in a situation where you have a smaller party, having a DM hero along to help out is a good idea if you're able to, be a player and not want to be in the spotlight. Nate Robbins says, so I like the rule that each player should be able to take out each other if needed, if they get mind controlled. The Batman theory. Yeah, Batman's plan is kryptonite. And Batman's plan for himself is the rest of the Justice League. So I don't know how good that is. Yes, feel free to tweak canon stat blocks all the time. They're there as a baseline for you. They're not intended to be set in stone. They're just there as when you run into this villain, usually this is how powerful they are. And they're built particularly for 4 to 6 characters. All of our adventures are built for 4 to 6 characters. I actually have a section in Astonishing Adventures Assembled that we can go over real quick. Talking all about how to tailor pre-written adventures for larger or smaller parties. Let me grab up my PDF, and I hope all of you have picked up yours already. I'm very excited about this book. I got to write the GM section of this book, and there was just a lot of really good bits and pieces. I got to talk about Session 0. I got to talk about tailoring adventures for balancing combat encounters. Another major thing to consider when you're running a smaller party is to ensure that you have you're handing out hero points more often. I generally, as a rule of thumb, like to do a hero point every scene. You might even want to do a hero point every scene and then have a complication come up or reward or vivid description. Make sure that they're flowing and encourage your heroes to use them. You can run into situations where player characters are hoarding them, which is... They are intended to be spent. It's part of the currency. It's part of the back and forth of our game. Just pulling up my PDF here. My computer's like, what's happening? Yes, David Bullock, the DMPC works very well as an oracle. That's actually, that's not even just from a stat perspective, but having a PC who is by themselves can suck for role-playing. If you don't have anybody to talk to, it's very good to have like an Alfred or an Oracle, somebody who can just buzz into the player's ear every now and then, just to remind them that they can talk to somebody. Customizing adventures. Here we go. Page 21. All right. Yes, Troy does say, hey friends, take a quick second to tap dance on that like button and jiggle the bell. It helps the algorithm do its thing and gets us in front of more folks. We appreciate that. Share screen. We're going to share a window, not the whole screen, because if you guys see all my emotional support tabs, you might die like me. All right, here we go. So, diving into larger and smaller groups. Like I said, Astonishing Adventures do assume that you're using a team of 4 to 5 heroes and present villains accordingly, with teams of villains or with minions in particular. For the most part, accommodating more or fewer heroes just requires you to remove or add additional villains. But for a smaller group, you may have encounters that don't have many villains to spare. You can increase the villain's power level And I would encourage you when you're designing combat encounters to make sure there are lots of opportunities for each character's unique abilities to come into play and to make life easier for them. Sort of like when you're doing that the other way, where you want villains to have a little bit of an advantage to deal with the number disparity. I also encourage you to reward clever problem solving with a lot more yeses rather than nos. And then if you're looking at your adventure, if you're special, in particular, a published adventure, you can combine or cut villains to make sure that there's less people running around to be a problem for the heroes. Nate Robbins says only $18.95. That's true. Yeah, I would also encourage you to refrain from using area attacks against smaller parties, just from a combat perspective. You don't want to be doing anything where, everybody's getting hit at once and there's a chance that everybody gets knocked out. If that does happen, remember that nothing is lethal in Mutants Masterminds unless you intend for it to be. So they don't die, they just get knocked down and they wake up in a death trap later. And the villain is there petting their white cat. There's also the Doombot trope to explain power discrepancies, says David Young. Yes. And Rebel Moose says, I've considered taking a mechanic from Traveler where players can have a boon, an extra d6, or give a bane, a d6 against an opponent's roll. That's a pretty good roll. It's a pretty good rule. In the Valiant book that we're working on, we actually have a bonus dice and a peril dice mechanic that we're working in, which is sort of like advantage in 5e. If something gives you a small bonus, you'll get to roll 2d20s and take the highest of the two. If something gives you a small penalty, you'll get to roll 2d20s and take the lower of the two. Yes, monologuing is always a good way to avoid a TPK. Villains just love to brag when they're ahead. They are very good at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. You also have an opportunity with smaller parties to really tailor the campaign to those characters. You have a lot less characters to work with. You have a lot more opportunity for screen time, and you have a chance in character creation and in campaign creation at session 0 to say, what plotline do you want for your character? What plotline do you want for your character? Have an overarching plot that you want to deal with, but when you're planning out a series, it's very easy to have one subplot or even 2 or 3 subplots per PC when there's only 1 or 2 of them. I always ask, what is one incorrect thing your character believes about the universe, and how do they want to learn better by the end of the story? Really bring your players into the planning and the storytelling aspect of the campaign when there's fewer of them. I mean, do that all the time anyway, but when there are fewer of them, you really want to bring them into the fold and incorporate their ideas, incorporate their desires for their characters, because they're going to get a lot of screen time, and you really want to make sure there are plenty of things for them to do and say, and there are plenty of lessons for them to learn, and it's not going to be boring being that character the whole time. Characters who are in motion tend to be more fun to play, in my experience. Yeah, just talking about challenge points again. I guess challenge points are also in Astonishing Adventures Assembled. I forgot that they were in there, not just in the Patreon. So traditionally, challenge points provide the game master with a resource like hero points when it comes to giving villains and other challenges in the adventure, a resource to help them to be a sufficient challenge against heroes. Nate, I've actually been practicing that. I'm having trouble matching my face up to my lips. Ken says it really gives time to dig into the drama family dynamics, the pressures of being a hero, tons of fun stuff. Yes. Thank you, Troy, for the super chat. Like if Alex should sing the whole next episode. That is, that's actually funny because I have an audition for Hunchback of Notre Dame before our next episode. So I'll be warmed up if we want that. David Bullock, what do you suggest if this is a temporary reduction in player as opposed to a new group with a smaller count? We're actually dealing with this right now in our Freedom League Dark in the Multiverse of the Mastermage stream because one of my players is off at the beach enjoying themselves this week. So Claude, I am going for the role of Frollo or Quasimodo. I'm happy either way. But we have a player who's at the beach right now, and as a GM, I made sure to come up with a reason that character was gone, and I made sure they were out of the story cliffhanger style. So they were introduced to another plot, and they realized, hey, I need to go take care of this while you guys go on to the next adventure. And there's a little bit of metagaming there because everybody knows that player is going to be gone, so it's okay if their character is gone and they're back. But you need to make sure that you have player buy-in for that. I just realized this music has been going on, and I could turn that off. Troy does what he does for the community. Yeah, but make sure that there's something for them to do that's sort of a cliffhanger style explanation for why they're not there, and then bring them back into the story when they come back. And then during the shore, I like to do sort of preemptive adventure design when I'm designing my adventures, where I don't necessarily say how many villains are going to be present. I'll put something like there are 2 minions per hero present, so I don't have to do a lot of additional math between adventures. And that works if I know somebody's going to be missing, or if somebody says I'm not going to be there on the day of. It's preemptive. It's something that you can do as you're building your adventures. Also make sure, if you can, make sure that nothing super important to the campaign is going to happen during that adventure while they're gone. If you have in your setting an imp who could show up and make something, mischief happen for an adventure, that's always fun. Like if Quirk shows up and puts everybody in the idiot box while the one player is missing, they're going to be sad they missed that adventure, but they're not going to be sad that they missed out on a big campaign development. And I like to have sort of in my back pocket one villain or one situation that can come up that can be a gap filler if I need one. If there's either, heaven forbid, I've underwritten something and we got through something faster than I thought it was going to do. That's never happened to me, but if it does happen to me, I'm prepared. But usually it's somebody can't show up on the day of, or there's a weather situation and the power goes out, or somebody's not going to be there and I know. Ken says, for smaller groups, is there anything different you need to account for? Death and knockout, since losing a member is 50% or 100% of the party. Yeah. Again, I'm very big on character death should always be dramatic and serve the story. It shouldn't be at the whims of dice. This is me giving you permission to fudge dice if you need to. If a situation comes up where just a random natural 20 would take a player character out, just say that didn't happen. I'm a big advocate for GM screens, specifically because there are a few instances where random swings of probability can completely derail the story, which can be exciting if you want to follow that path, but especially in a situation where there are a few players running around, it can be dangerous to just be at the whims of probability. But also, I encourage you, never kill somebody as a result of an incapacitated, unless it's a situation where clearly they're dead. Although, as with all things in superhero comics, just because you're dead doesn't mean the story is over. I have had TPKs in the past in games that have resulted in the heroes waking up in the afterlife and getting to make a deal to come back, or one of them traveling forward from the future to be like, hey, don't do that, and then traveling back and then getting to deal with sort of the ramifications of time traveling backwards to figure out what they did wrong. What about a flashback episode? I do love flashback episodes, particularly if somebody can't be there. I love flashback episodes as a way to deliver exposition because the players are playing through it, and it's not just me talking to them for 15 minutes saying what happened. If the situation is exciting enough, if there are characters they can play, if there is wiggle room in the outcome of what happened, because that's one issue you could run into with a flashback episode is you say what's supposed to happen in the flashback and then that doesn't happen. That could be, I've had that happen before. So make sure it's a situation that you're relatively sure you can Halo ODST it. Troy says, pick one. Nerd, 20 different half messages on 30 different social media platforms is not my favorite. Yeah, I like YouTube a lot personally. That's how I prefer to watch things. But YouTube and Facebook are both. The Facebook messages are coming through. I did notice that the Facebook chats weren't coming through last time we did our thing. So let me go double check and make sure that's happening. Have any of you run games for smaller parties before? Oh no, good. The messages are coming through on Facebook. Awesome. Yeah, I like YouTube as a platform. It's one of my preferred method of watching things. But I'm also a nerd of a certain age. I will say I was very nervous watching my Gen Con events because 3 of them only had 1 player in them until earlier this week. And I thought for sure I was going to have 3 adventures where it was just going to be me and 1 other person for 4 hours. That's another thing to think about when you are, especially in a situation where somebody is missing instead of it being a smaller party all the time. Characters are going to be. There are going to be fewer actions taking place and things are going to get done faster with fewer players. I would encourage you to keep in mind as you're developing things. You could probably get in more combats if you are running an adventure that has more people in it or fewer people in it. You're going to be able to get through more combat rounds basically because there are fewer characters taking actions. I love investigative adventures for smaller parties because players will chew on everything forever with investigations. They are very excited to go over clues, very excited to pour over locations, to role play. There's a lot of good opportunity to tread water, basically, as they are wearing themselves out. But investigations aren't for everybody. They are sort of hard to prepare. We'll probably have an episode about investigations because there are several tricks to running decent investigations, in my opinion. What else should we talk about with smaller parties? I might encourage you to give smaller parties more resources for free. Things like headquarters, things like vehicles. Give them some additional points in order to encourage them to have additional things that they can bring to bear. If somebody has a vehicle that they can have show up to take actions, that's another great option to add additional actions on the side of the heroes. They've got things they can do. They've got resources. They've got additional things working for them that aren't necessarily other PCs. Pets are good if you're in the kind of game and setting where you can have characters have a pet who is combat capable. But again, ranks of sidekick, ranks of minion, anything like that gives them more actions for less characters. I'd also be more accepting of the summoning power in a smaller party because my main issue with summoning in traditional games of M&M is that it adds additional bloat to the turn order. But in a situation where there are fewer party members, if one of them is able to summon something on their side, that is another stat block on working for the heroes. There are other powers that are good for this, things like mind control or illusion that encourage, that basically switch villains to your side to add additional people punching in the same way. That's another great thing to build. Magic characters work very well as smaller parties if you're looking at something like Constantine hanging out by himself. And I encourage you to really specialize your characters in the stories that you're telling for them. If you just one person, if it's one character who is very good at magic, I would encourage you to keep all of the adventures around that motif. so that they never have to really branch out and they don't have to deal with the wider world. There's fewer things that they have to use their points to cover the bases of. David Bollock says, have you tried multiple characters per player, such as character sidekick? Yes. I found that works pretty well. That's also built-in role-playing opportunity. In a situation where you have one or two players who both have sidekicks, like if you're doing something like Batman and Damian hanging out with Superman and Jonathan, that's a great example of two characters with two sidekicks, or four players if you want to build it that way too. Yeah, and you can, with a sidekick situation, you as the GM can handle the role-playing element of the sidekick, but give the player the control of the sidekick stat block during combat or skill checks. Have them roll all of the dice for that character, but you can handle the role-playing aspect of it. I mean, hero support. Can you rephrase your question for me, David? I'm not 100% sure. Do you mean that you have a support hero who works alongside a sidekick, or a sidekick who's a support hero working alongside a hero? I have also had situations where players played multiple superheroes, both in small parties and in larger parties. Sort of a troop style story where they decide, hey, I want to bring this character in, I want to bring that character out. Yeah, Nate, Masked in Mayhem is a perfect example of a three-player party. RC does a great job running 4 groups of that size. If I was smart, I would have asked him a couple of these questions. Yeah, Umbran Initiative is another podcast that has a group of 3 players. Yep. I think 3 is a lot of fun for role playing, especially podcast style, where episodes have to be concise. They have to be a certain length. When you have fewer players, they have more opportunities to shine, more opportunities to role play, more opportunities to be the problem solver, just be the support character. There's a lot of cool options for smaller parties in that way. And I definitely wouldn't be upset with a smaller party of adventurers. Or do it ARS style. I don't think I know what that means, David. Oh, a Sky High joke. Yes. Yep. Sorry. Usually Sky High lives rent free in my brain, but it's been a long week getting ready for Gen Con. I should run a Sky High game at Gen Con or Origins at some point. I actually had a really exciting game that I want to run at UConn this year in November. It's Legends of Tomorrow. Go after a time-displaced Elvis in Las Vegas during an Elvis impersonator tournament. And through magical shenanigans, he gains the powers of Shazam. And they have to convince Elvis to go back to his own time period. I think it'll be a lot of fun. What other questions do you have about smaller groups, everybody? I should mention that this topic was suggested in a comment on one of our previous live streams by Andrea Cavalli. So thank you for leaving a comment. I do try to get to the comments over there when they pop up. If you miss or you get the VOD and you have another question, please feel free to leave a comment on the video, and I'll come back and I check them once or twice after between shows. This lounge music is not bad today. R Magica. You also have an opportunity in smaller groups to really put together to really build a relationship between the heroes and the villains. There's a great opportunity to increase the nemesis potential. The villains are going to get a lot more face-to-face time with individual heroes, so there's a lot of chances for you to increase that relationship, to make things more personal. What do you do if you have a small group initially and suddenly someone can't make it or even brings a friend to try the game? So, with a small group initially and somebody can't make it, if it's one person, it's not a problem. The game's not happening that night. But if it's two people and you get down to one person, you have a choice. You can reschedule the game for next week, but my dad always said the game must go on. You can take things down and run a really personal story for that one character. Something separate from the main storyline that's going on, but if they have a villain that's a nemesis or has a particular bone to pick with that character, I would bring that person out for a one-shot adventure, basically. Or if there's something going on in their subplot that you discussed in session 0, that is a great opportunity to really pour some time into that. If there is if the player has a romantic interest, it could be a great one-on-one adventure to play out the first date or play out a situation where they finally have the chance to go out with this person, and then, oh no, villains come, and then you had the whole situation where they're switching into costume to go fight villains, coming back to the date, getting the clothes wrong, sort of that fun situation like that. Anything that is really personal to the one character, I would make sure to do that. And I like, it's a great change of pace. It's an opportunity to do a different kind of story. If you're in the middle of a story arc, that's a little harder. I'm a big fan of every adventure having a solid beginning, middle, and end. But I understand that there will be some situations where one person can't come and you left it off on a cliffhanger. In that case, I would consider just postponing until everybody can show up. Because that's a big moment for the whole duo. But you'll know what to do in that situation. If you have somebody who wants to bring a friend to try the game, that's a great opportunity to, if the heroes have a sidekick, I would have that person try playing the sidekick of one of the other heroes to start with. Or if there is a hero from outside of town who's coming in and can be sort of a member of the party for a special guest appearance, that's another fun thing that you can do. I wouldn't have them make their own character. I would have that new person play somebody who's already an established element in the story, whether it's a canon character in your wider continuity, or if it is a sidekick or it's an NPC, maybe even a villain who gets some jumped up powers and decides they want to play hero for a week. If you have a lame villain roaming around, that could be a really fun thing to do. But you're just trying to get their feet wet. You're just trying to get them experience with Mutants and Masterminds. And if they like it, it's a great opportunity for you and the other two players to have a second session 0, basically, talking about this new character and how they're going to be incorporated into the story. I would find a way to incorporate that new player, relate it to the wider story arc that's going on. So if there's a villain who is creating super powered people, that superpowered person's the new character. If there's a situation where aliens are coming in, there's an alien who's opposed to the other aliens who comes down as a character. Work with the third person to really play up their involvement in the campaign. And then when you're ready to start your next series, they could start fresh with their own sort of at-will character concept. I ran Curse of Strahd a few years ago, and I had one of my friends brought somebody who had never played role-playing games before to join the party, and she wanted to see if she liked it. She wanted to try it out, and I had her play. Curse of Strahd has an NPC who's sort of an important person they carry around to keep safe from Strahd. I had her play that NPC, and she liked playing that NPC so much that she was just that NPC for the rest of the campaign. So there's a lot of fun opportunities like that. Have a spot that you incorporate that person into without breaking your back trying to force a new character into a story if you have things planned. Accidental caps. Accidental caps sounds like an accident that happened in the Super Soldier program. Nate Robbins, all I want is a live stream from Gen Con with con review and insight. You are in luck. Troy has a whole station set up at the Green Ronin booth where he will be doing live streaming and interviews and talking to people and dragging me into things, I assume. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great experience. Yeah, I think when you're considering a smaller party as well, when you're doing adventure design, you want to make sure that you focus more on investigation and combat and role playing than you do skill challenges. There are opportunities for skill challenges for smaller parties, but sort of the basic conceit of a skill challenge is they have to succeed on a certain number of skill checks before a certain number of failures take place. When you have less people, it is harder for players to come up with different stages of that skill challenge for themselves improvised. And there are more opportunities for them to fail, and it is going to take longer because in our skill challenge write-up, every skill check has a set amount of time that it takes. So if you only have 1 or 2 characters doing this, it's going to take a longer amount of time. That's fine, but you need to be aware of that when you're designing your skill challenges. And I would encourage you to do a lot more prepared skill challenges. So less, how do you want to contribute to the skill challenge, and more, these are the stages of the skill challenge that need to be accomplished. Which one of you wants to try what? I have a skill challenge in an adventure I wrote that is a perfect example of this. Let me grab that real quick. This is kind of rough, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. This is an adventure I have not published yet, but attempts at laying out an adventure myself. And I'm not super great at InDesign, but it's a fun adventure. So just pulling up a screen share real quick. Coming down, conflict scene, wrap up, navigating the maze challenge. This is what I'm talking about. So let me zoom in even more because that's kind of hard to read. So like I said, each skill check has an amount of time that it represents. Each check represents 10 minutes of effort. But in this check, I have written out an athletics or appropriate power check to traverse gaps or clear rubble. That has to be done first because they have to get into the tunnel that they're getting into. A DC 18 power check or appropriate expertise check, such as history, treasure hunting, etc., to figure out the correct path. And a DC 20 perception check or investigation check to search for clues left behind by passerbys from the eons past. So these are basically first, second, and third thing that have to take place during the skill challenge. I would encourage you to write more skill challenges like this so that there is a set amount of things that have to be done, and the players know I have to do this in order to be successful. And then again, successes with a total of 5 degrees, the group is able to find their way to the chamber in normal trouble. With 6 degrees, the heroes find signs of the mummified baboon guardians of the chamber, granting a +2 bonus to initiative to the conflict with them later in the scene. And with 8 degrees of success, they pick up some subliminal clues related to the lost library, granting a +2 circumstance bonus on their first investigation check within the chamber, as well as the +2 to initiative. And then every time they fail, they have to resist a damage 3, to resist booby traps, falling rocks, stumbling into pits, all that sort of fun stuff. As for Ken's question here, any pre-written modules that are particularly good for 1 to 2 player games? I do think that we have some adventures that are good for 1 to 2 player games. I think particularly the next one that's coming out, Night of the Living Robots, would be great for a smaller party. Particularly because of the setting and because of the places in Freedom City that it involves. Having 1 to 2 power level 10 characters would be a fine substitute for the 4 to 6 power level 8 characters the adventure calls for. That adventure should be out pretty soon, but other adventures that are great for smaller parties, Bike Club, that Hero High adventure we released, is pretty good for that size. anything that is pretty much contained to a single area or dealing with a single villain, I'd say Menace on Mystery Mountain is a great opportunity for 1 to 2 players, because those could be 2 superheroes that are on vacation somewhere far away from the rest of the party. If there's a special circumstance where you want to have 2 characters together, whether it's a romantic situation or the 2 characters are siblings and they're off with their family somewhere away from the rest of the party. Idiot Box is a pretty good small party because you're moving into TV shows and the stakes are pretty low. You're probably not going to die in the Idiot Box because Quark doesn't like that. Quark is there as a safety tool in case you need somebody to step in and save the heroes from their own foolishness. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the best small party adventures that we have currently. Yeah, the other ones, they take place in multiple locations, and there's lots of villains, and having more people would be helpful. But that's not to say that you can't modify those adventures to accommodate smaller parties. It's just those are the ones that I think would take the least amount of work to do so. Do I have any pictures of the mummified baboons in here? I don't think I do. Drop. I've been getting ready for Gen Con and coming up with 3 new magic kits for my Titan City setting, and I'm pretty excited about them. Unfortunately, I won't have time to get art done of them for my artist, but I've had a couple online artists. I reached out to them and asked them if I could borrow some of their characters, and they said that was fine. How much do you charge for design help? I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I'd have to figure out what the budget is for that. What about a traveling scenario such as they used for Ben 10? Yeah, a traveling scenario is great for that. Any traveling scenario is great for smaller parties, thinking about stuff like X-Files or Supernatural or anything where there are 2 characters who are traveling across the country solving problems. Because you get to travel around, a lot of the long-form story arcs are related to the characters themselves, and dealing with those problems is able to be tackled by 2 people each episode. So the monsters are never bigger than what 2 people can handle. And you can get into some really fun circumstances like the Groundhog Day episode in Supernatural where Dean just gets killed over and over and over and over again. And you have the other character who's like, what's happening? Green Lantern and Green Arrow. Yes, that's a perfect travel adventure. Just Green Lantern and Green Arrow traveling across, and Green Lantern coming to grips with the fact that he's a hero on Earth, and he has to acknowledge that there are things that he is not seeing at his upper level. Smaller adventures that deal with characters with wildly different powers are also an awesome opportunity for good role playing, or heroes that have wildly different perspectives. Also comes into character creation in Session 0. It is figuring the relationship between our heroes and what do we agree on, what do we disagree on, what do we, where are we coming from, and where can we use that to build tension, because we're going to be acting off of each other a lot. Some of the best partnerships are due to the fact that characters disagree fundamentally on a lot of different things, but they agree to do the right thing, even if they don't always necessarily know what the right thing is, or agree on what the right thing is. I have an adventure that needs a pros mentorship. Oh, you're okay. You don't mean like graphic design, you mean development. Send me an email, Nate at alex@greenrunning.com, and I'll review it and I'll let you know what my rate would be. Generally, with freelance editing, I charge 2 cents a word for copy editing, but that's a little bit different than development work. What if the players you have don't mesh well together? just disband the party. I think there are a few circumstances where you have to disband the party as a whole, as long as everybody sort of takes that baseline of being an adult and communicating and speaking about what we want to get out of the game experience, being mature enough to do that, because you're going to be in each other's faces a lot, and being safe with one another. There are, make sure you have safety tools in play that can prevent things from escalating, because they're going to be talking just to each other or just to you if it's one player. I think a strong session 0 and a strong concept on your part will do a lot of work to ensure that the players will mesh well together, unless they have fundamentally different ideas of superhero games, which can happen. I mean, people have different tastes, people have different wants from gaming, and I think it's up to you to sort of suss out what kind of player both of them are and tailor things that appeal to both of them in the adventures you're running. There's probably a whole episode about the types of players and how to deal with them. I've seen lots of things online dealing with what kinds of players exist. But players, like, there are actors who like to act their characters out and they like to do all that. Small groups work very well for multiple actors. If there are 2 actors in your group, you're going to have a great time. But if you have an actor and somebody who is just there to fight people, they're going to butt heads a little bit. If you have somebody who's a power gamer, this is a great opportunity for them, because they have the chance to build a character who could do the work of 2 or 3 other player characters. This is an opportunity to sort of tell them, hey, you can flex your muscles. You can really get into the nitty gritty of the system and come up with a character that I ordinarily wouldn't allow you to do. So power gamers, actors, those are generally the types of players who are going to enjoy smaller groups. There are some players who will not enjoy smaller groups. Players who sort of shrink into the background. There are some players who are there just sort of as spectators. They're there. They're happy to be hanging out with their friends. They're happy to be having snacks. They're happy to roll dice every now and then when it's their turn, but they're not there to be center stage. They're not there to stand up and draw a lot of attention to themselves. They're not going to have as good of a time with a smaller group, because it's going to be on them to be engaged, to be participating, to be vocal. And you don't want to force that. I mean, if you only have a couple of players who are into that, maybe you guys grab a board game and you play board games, or you just hang out. And then you go on the internet and try to find a group to play with, or you go to a convention and look for local people in your area to hang out with, or you go online, or you go to your friendly local game store. There are plenty of places to find gamers, and our population is getting bigger every day. I mean, there are new gamers joining the scene exponentially. So you will be able to find somebody to play with if the group you have is too small for your taste, or they're not the kind of players who can handle a smaller group. And you're the GM. We're all here to have fun. We're all here to play the game, but unfortunately a lot falls onto the GM to sort of assess that, to make that decision for themselves, to see if the amount of effort and if your players are going to have as good a time as you want to. Because your enjoyment does matter. There are a lot of things about being a GM that are a lot of hard work, and there are a lot of things that you have to do and you have to put aside when you become a GM, but you do still need to have fun at the end of the day. We're doing this to have a good time. And if you're in a situation where your players are not facilitating that, then it's up to you to find new players. Or play a different kind of game. Yeah, I think you do have 2 options when you are building a smaller game. Where smaller players, you have an option if you want to do sort of the cross-country adventure, or the case of the week adventure where they fly out to a different place each week. Or you can do something that is built into one contained area, sort of like Hell's Kitchen, or one neighborhood, or Gotham City if you're crazy like Batman. But it's one place that they get really into and they form a very strong connection to. Those are sort of the two options when it comes to building out a smaller party's adventures. And both are great. You just want to make sure you talk to your players about what their character concept is, and you want to make sure that you have a concept that works for either one very micro detailed area or one macro all over the place adventure. You have a lot of chances to come up with a lot of interesting villains and tie them into the setting when you do sort of the micro style world building where it's one location but it's very detailed. You get to decide all of the businesses, you get to build all of the NPCs who are like the major important players. There's all sort of factions and all the politics and all of that all in one very contained area, and that's a very cool place to be from a world building point of view. I like that a lot. If you're going with something that's macro, like a monster of the week in a different city every week, you don't want to get that detailed. You want to make sure when you're building your adventure, you know who the antagonist is, who's in their immediate social circle. And the victim doesn't have to be like a murder victim or anything. It could be who was robbed. It can be the lab that was broken into. It can be, just whatever situation your villain is bringing to that location. You want to make sure you know who the villain is, who's involved in the crime, and a couple of little setting pieces that you can have them travel to, like if there's a motel they're staying at or a diner. Just anything that can, and be prepared to improvise a lot when you're dealing with a town of the week situation, because you don't want to come up with a name for every sheriff in the United States when you're doing your world building. David Young is starting up a game with a central location with an episodic serial feel like Deep Space Nine or Babylon 5, where there's a crisis of the week with serial bits that build up. That's great. Yeah, that is a perfect example of a micro world building setting. Is any power level good, or should it generally be higher since it's less people? That's sort of up to your preference. I'm certainly cool with building higher power level than you usually would. You'll have to do less work on adapting pre-written adventures, which is cool. And your characters will be able to do more things with less powerful villains. I'm more interested when it comes to power level what are they able to do? How many power points do they have? And what are the villains in relation to them in power level wise? If you want higher numbers, definitely go with a higher power level. But I think depth of ability is more important than strength of ability, if that makes sense. Yeah, I'd even encourage you to give out more than 15 power points per power level if you're building with a smaller party. I have my story where a part of the party ends up as a double agent. Ooh, that's exciting. You got to be careful with that, Nate. You got to make sure everybody is mature and able to deal with the situation. I like to avoid PvP when I can. It's not unavoidable. I mean, there are going to be situations, but P is one of those things that can completely ruin the game night if it's out of control. My players generally prefer the Doom Patrol power level. Tons of fun. Yeah, Doom Patrol is such a good show. I love Doom Patrol. And that's a great example of a power level where your heroes are awesome, but there are things that are way more powerful than them, and there are things that are way less powerful than them. So there's a lot of cool opportunities there, in my opinion. Double agents are risky business. It either falls flat or works perfectly. Yeah. I think double agents and one-on-one fights are both things that sound really cool on paper and then can really fall on your face when you're doing storytelling, especially in tabletop role-playing game storytelling. I I planned this amazing one-on-one fight between Centuria and this god of war in the middle of Freedom City, and Roll20 decided that we were not going to roll above a 10, either Centuria or me, for like 2 hours. It was the worst. It was so painful to watch. The story does force them to make moral decisions that could tear the team apart. Yeah, again, I just encourage you to use your safety tools, Nate, because that is... you never want anybody to leave your game feeling bad as a player. Your characters can leave feeling bad, but even as a traumatizing GM like I am, I do check in with my players and I say, I want to, I'm just checking at the end of the adventure. How's the temperature in the room? Is everybody still feeling good? Are we all still having fun playing the game? Is this too much? Just checking in. Yeah, if you guys want, we can actually do some more character creation while we chat about this, just because I've got characters I'm making for Origins, and I don't know that I have too terribly much more to say about the topic unless you guys have questions. I want to leave pretty much 30 minutes or so for questions or just chilling. And I'm sorry we started a little late tonight. Alex, in a table game, do you hide your dice or roll them openly? In a table game, I traditionally hide my dice. With our Roll20 games, I roll them out in the open because I get bored. I don't want to go through the effort of pressing GM rolls on all my NPCs. I'm lazy. But in a table game, especially in a one-shot scenario, I do typically roll my dice behind the game because I find that most GMing is rolling dice so they make a noise, looking at them meaningfully, and then deciding what happens. Cool. I'm here for more character creation. My Hero Lab should be working fine because we're on my desktop. This is my first joy of game mastering in my home office, so I've been on the road for the last month or so, doing a lot of dog sitting and cat sitting and visiting friends in New York and Michigan. Been sort of all over the place. Does that look like it's working? I think it's working. Yeah, it's not all staticky. Cool. So, diving in, we are building some characters for my Parkhurst, the Dragon of Parkhurst Manor adventure, in which some magical teenagers find a baby dragon outside of their school, and they have to figure out how to reunite it with its mother. It takes place in my Titan City setting. And I realized as I was opening up my pre-gens and getting all my characters ready that I only had 5 pre-gens made, and I needed to make a couple extra characters. So, our first character here today is Betsy Decatur, native name Cheppy. She is a member of the Nagamo tribe in Titan City. They were the original settlers of the area, the indigenous settlers of Titan City, until all the bad things happened with colonizing. And her family was submitted into a re-education facility, but she ran away from that at the behest of her uncle, who was empowered by one of their deities. And she is slowly realizing that she shares the abilities that her uncle has. So she has gone to learn how to control them at the Silverthorn Academy for Magic and Monster Children. Ken says, I've been thinking about getting Hero Labs, which version works for M&M. Hero Lab Classic is what you want to look for. It's a one-time payment of $29.99, and you can use Mutants Masterminds 3rd Edition. Yeah, if you don't want to do the Hero Lab subscription model, that's only for 5e and Pathfinder, I believe. I don't think they have Mutants and Masterminds plugged in there. But Betsy is able to do... she's empowered by the god Chibiabos, the Wolf Lord of the Dead. So basically, she's able to control shadows, she's able to increase her agility and her strength, and she has the ability to control the undead. So we're going to build some pretty interesting powers here today. The character is power level 8 with 120 power points. So just diving in to start with, I guess I'll build out her regular abilities first. It's always interesting when you're building an M&M character because you get to decide, is this going to be a power-heavy character? Is this going to be a skill-heavy character? And you could sort of poke around and figure out exactly where you want to start and what do you think is going to take up the most of your point allocation. Power level 8, 120 power points is you get characters who are very good at one thing and then are sort of just okay at other things. But Betsy's pretty smart. She's also, what is she? She's also 16. Yeah, Betsy and her family are members of the Nagamo tribe, the first people to settle the area. The Nagamo settled the shores of Lake Ohanzi, 20 miles west of Titan City, and were the first guardians of its oldest secret. The lake was not simply a body of water, but a passageway into the land of the dead. This underworld was the domain of Chibiabos, Wolf Lord of the Dead. Chibiabos became a patron to the Nagamo, providing them with long life and good health in exchange for guarding the entrance of Ohanzi. The grid of the Nagamo was blessed with control over the shadows, supernatural agility, and power over the dead. So, she's not going to start off with supernatural agility. She is only a 16-year-old kid, but pretty smart. She's pretty aware. She has pretty good common sense. Yeah, I think basic human for the rest of what we're dealing with. And then we dive into the blessings of Chibiados, which I'm going to build as a multiple effect. Basically a group of powers that are all banded together into one main power. You don't have to build your powers this way. I just like to do it for ease of knowing when a power being able to click. Sorry about that. The garage door opened and the internet flickered, but that's okay. But like I was saying, I like to do multiple effects for powers like this that all come from the same source, basically, because I'm able to check it, uncheck it, and go from there. RC! What's up, RC? We were talking about your show earlier. We were saying lots of nice things, I promise. But she has the blessings of Chibiabos. As mentioned, give her... And I don't usually build... If a character like Shazam or a character like... Shazam's the best example. A character who gets a lot of ability bonuses from powers, I generally go with enhanced trait rather than enhanced ability, so I don't have to build a million of them. But these are superhuman attributes. And then I'll go through and I'll build exactly which abilities are modified. In her case, there's going to be some strength. There's going to be some stamina. There's going to be some agility, some fighting, probably a little bit of dexterity too. And she's only power level 10, so we're looking at... Or she's only power level 8, so she's not going to be super powerful, but she's quick. She's good at infiltration. That's her role in the party, is infiltrator. And she has some neat powers that interact with some of her other party members pretty well. Kiki's having some kind of weird glitch because I've gotten 90 emails that you went live there. Uh-oh. Are there going to be different levels in which she's able to manifest the power, but then maybe influenced by the darker side of it? I mean, like power level 1, 2, 3. It's kind of like a personal, like in Volcano or becoming a werewolf outside. Yeah, there are situations that could be appropriate. I'm not going to do it here because this is for a con game, and then that could get confusing for people who don't know a whole lot about M&M. Yeah, just some easy, gentle abilities there. So when she has her abilities available to her, she's going to have a 4 strength, a 4 stamina, 6 agility, 2 dexterity, and 4 fighting. So she's going to be pretty good at a lot of different abilities. We're building her sort of like a quick and fast striker. We're looking at the shadow control option as well. So this is a cool opportunity to pull up gadget or power profiles, which I still don't have in print. I'm getting it at Gen Con, finally. My computer's pulling up power profiles. So we can look at shadow powers and see if there's anything cool that can be something we can grab. Just a couple of cool powers, like a dark aura. Shadowy aura surrounds your body with an effect like a dark blast on anyone touching you. So that's reaction damage to being touched. Death Stare, that's not really what we're looking for. Gloom, though, having an ability to make an environment where visibility is lower is very much in play as she pulls the shadows around her and she makes the space darker for people in the general vicinity. Another thing to consider when creating characters is how experienced they are with their powers. So this character is only 16 and she's specifically at a magical school to learn how to use her abilities. So I'm not going to give her selective on a lot of things. So her environment is going to give a visibility of -2 out to a radius of 60 feet. But that'll be everybody in the immediate area is affected by it who doesn't have dark vision or the ability to generate light to try to nullify it. Because again, she's learning how to use her abilities. Oh, this is going to be, okay. My bad, I need to give her a shadow control array. Because she has a group of abilities that are similar enough and only able to be used one at a time that, yeah. It should be part of an array. But unfortunately, you can't use an array in multiple effects in Hero Lab. You are perfectly welcome to do it at home if you have a regular form fillable character sheet. It's just a quirk of the software. Does Mutants and Masterminds have a pre-gen card set for NPCs and heroes of the like, but you can just like augment your game by showing people cards? Like from all the architecture that we have in the books, you know, just a card set that's based off of those. If you needed a ninja, you'd have a card, or you'd have a police officer. We do have something like that on Roll20. There are some stat block bundles that you can get that have NPCs with art. It's not something we have a physical product of, but it would be cool. Yeah, just having a deck O NPCs. I actually got something pretty cool at Origins. I'll show you guys on the next one. It's not in my immediate vicinity, but Chris Pramus gave me the French printing of the condition cards. So I've got a bunch of French condition cards. I've made some NPC cards and power cards so that I can print and fill them out, or fill them out and then print. Yeah. Those are always cool. More shadow control abilities. Superhero Tarot Edition. That was actually a really cool thing they included in Marvel Midnight Sun. Was some tarot cards for a lot of the different Marvel characters. Scry through shadows. You could peer into a shadow or other areas of darkness to perceive what's happening near another such shadow. I think that's an ability she'll be able to have in the future, but I don't think it's one she uses all the time. We'll probably go with that could be an interesting power stunt. Shadow Crawl. Tendrils or limbs of shadow emerge from your body or a dark aura around it to carry you above the ground like the legs of a giant spider. That's scary. She does have the ability to move faster because of shadows, but I don't think spider legs is where we're gonna go. Mirror Shadow. Shadow shaping. No, she's probably not. It's always an interesting game of balance to play when you're building characters, because you want to know how experienced they are, what they're able to do, and just really figure out what's a power and what's a power stunt, and yeah, just a lot of cool things. She's got the ability to throw shadow bolts, which are sort of like dark shards of solidified shadow from her fingertips. Shadow shards is what I'll call them. I also love getting to create names for powers in M&M character sheets, especially if it's a pre-gen and your players haven't seen them before. That's really fun. We are going to make it strength-based because she's able to summon the shadow and then she whips it out of her hand. So sort of like a thrown knife or anything like that. And that'll also incorporate some of that enhanced strength that she has. And it keeps us down at 4 points instead of going way up. So our array is still being built with 4 power points. Shadow shards, shadow control to make the big and dark environment. Probably go with concealment is a good idea. She can create an obscuring effect within 30 feet. Obscure is a sensory effect requiring a standard action. Cost is based on the senses affected. A single sense for 1 point per rank. Obscure affects a default area with a 30-foot radius. So, yeah. This affects vision because it's darkness. Obscuring mist. Or obscuring shadows, it's not mist. And that's just free concealment. It's a lot of fun. Yes, she can move faster through darkness or shadows. So that's going to go into the blessings section, however, because those are powers that she can use her other powers during. So we'll call it the speed power Shadow Stride. We give her a good 30 miles an hour. She can move faster than some of the cars in this time period. I think I might put a limitation on this, though, that she does have to be in darkness, basically, to use this ability. Limited only while in shadows. So she can use that in conjunction with her obscuring shadows to move faster for a long distance, but outside of using that ability, she has to find darkness to move around in. She should have senses to be able to see in the dark, obviously. Wolf senses. She also has the unique ability to detect undead. So we're looking at dark vision to see through darkness. We're looking at extended hearing and smell. Ultra hearing. Tracking through smell. And then she has an awareness, or she has detect. A range detect undead. Because Chibiabos is one of the lords of the undead. And one of the jobs of the Nagamo was to make sure that nobody went into the underworld and nobody went out of the underworld. Perfect. I should probably give her some extended hearing as well. Hearing. There we go. She also has shadow claws that she's a lot better at using. She's much better at close up than she is at ranged. Shadow claws. We're going to put multi-attack on these. They're also going to be strength-based, rank 2. So she's kind of a shadowy character, kind of a melee striker, kind of sort of also good at tracking. There's a lot of interesting abilities here. And then the last thing, power-wise, that we're going to build is her unique ability to control the undead. It's a mind control effect that only affects the undead. Basically, she can look at an undead person, reach out with her ability, reach out with her psyche, with her mind, and compel that person to stay in place, basically. Control the undead. She's not quite pointing yet. We're gonna say we're gonna call the power Stillness of the Grave, and she has the ability to basically paralyze an undead person. Just lock them in place. Limited. And one more limited condition. And still. I might build this as a snare instead. We'll see. We'll see. All right. And I'm going to run to the restroom real quick, but if you guys hang out, I'll be back in just a couple minutes. Thank you for hanging out with us, Ken. It's always good to see you. I'm glad I was able to provide some insight. We'll probably finish up Betsy here, and then we'll probably get out of here for the evening. Our next Joy of Game Mastering is actually going to be the Tuesday after I get back from Gen Con, so I will have a lot to chat about, I'm sure. Are there any topics in mind that you any topics in mind that sound good to discuss? Anything pressing? All right, so I think we're done with her powers. I think we are good with her general ability. She's a striker. She's good at infiltrating. I want to go over and pump up some of her abilities. So power level 8. I think, again, she's another character who's good at avoiding damage, but not so good at absorbing it. Yeah, we're going to pump her up to 10 dodge and parry. Go with a good 6 or 7 fortitude. 7 or 8 will probably... We need to dump a couple points into defensive roll. Benefit status, because she is the Shadow Wolf, the burgeoning Shadow Wolf. So that comes with a little bit of status that she can use alongside the Nagamo tribe. If the investigation takes them that route, she'll get a circumstance bonus to negotiating with members of her own tribe. And she might be able to pull on some resources that other characters might not have access to. She's good at hiding, so I think we need to go with Favored Environment Darkness and Hide in Plain Sight. I don't usually give a lot of Improved Initiative, but I am going to put Improved Initiative on this character to simulate the fact that they're often the ones who are engaging first. They strike from the shadows and they retreat back into them. There's a lot of fun opportunities there that can be reflected in Improved Initiative. We're going to go with Move by Action. I do want to give her at least 1 rank of Takedown. Maybe not 2, but 1 for sure. And I think that's going to be her advantages. Like I said, Favored Environment Darkness. Initiative 1. Defensive roll, we need to give her 1 more point in that. Wolf of the Nagamo tribe. She speaks English and Nagamo. This is a fun trick if you're developing one-shots. I encourage you not to make one-shot characters pay for languages. Just fill in the blank here for what languages they speak and just let that be a fun bit of flavor for the character. The other things, so now we're into her skill. She should be pretty good at perception because she's good at smelling and tracking and all that fun stuff. We'll put that all the way to power level 8. Stealth is going to be her best skill at a power level at 12, and I've got 3 ranks left to work with. We need to put some stuff in fighting for her close attacks. So I'm going to go with unarmed, which will also cover the shadow claws because it's the same kind of fighting, basically. It's fighting with the hands. I also am a big fan of allowing also add ranks to grab, but you can definitely, your mileage may vary on that. That's up to you as a GM. I want to get her, man. This is where you get rough, looking at here at 120 points, trying to figure out what to shave from where. Because I've only got 1 point left, which is 2 skill ranks. I do want to give her the good perception, the good stealth. She needs a little bit of range combat too for the shadow control. So there's points there. Okay, I need to figure out where we can shed some points because I want to be able to give her like insight, maybe a little bit of athletics. I don't think I can take any of the advantages away. Maybe take down and just let her use multi-attack. This is where it gets rough. We're going to take Fortitude down to a +6. Yeah. And I do encourage you when you're building characters to stay in those power points. I know it's easy to say, okay, I'll just sneak a couple extra power points in here for this character, but I don't know. I prefer the challenge of making sure everything fits and finding where you could shave points and really zeroing in on the concept and zeroing in on the what role do they play in the party and making sure that that's where they're at. Because this character, their main role is infiltration. They should be able to sneak. They should be able to spot things and figure out clues. And they don't need to be the best melee combatant because there is a brawler in the group who is the best melee combatant. I could take the Stillness of the Grave Affliction down to rank 7. And that'll free up 2 more points. Hello, RTE Studios. How are you doing tonight? Thank you for joining us. We had a very lengthy discussion about running adventures for smaller parties. And now we're doing a little bit of character creation for one of my Gen Con events. So thank you for hanging out. Please feel free to post any questions you have in the chat. And yeah, we'll go from there. Yeah, I could get rid of her shadow shards. How many points does that free up? That frees up 4 points. Okay. And then I don't have to have ranks in ranged combat. It does mean that she doesn't have a ranged combat option, but that's... I'd rather have the skill points, I think. Because I want to put some points in investigation as well. Because investigation is a little bit different than perception. Oh, insight, pump that up a little bit more. She's been through a lot, and she knows when somebody is BSing her. I don't think she has a lot of soft skills, so I don't think we're going to go with anything in deception or persuasion or intimidation. That's not really her bag. Maybe a little expertise. I'm going to give her expertise Titan City because she grew up here. She went through a formal school that was part of the re-education plan of Titan City. That is a little different than min-maxing, yes. And I encourage you when you're making pre-gens not to worry too much about min-maxing. I think, especially with Mutants and Masterminds, player characters in M&M are very sturdy. And they're very good at a lot of things. I've got 3 points left now. You see, now I'm the other direction. I've got the skills I want, but I don't think I need more. Oh, oi. All right, I can put takedown back on at least. That'll give me a point back. Because I want her to be able to do takedown. She's sort of... That's... Some of it is her training. Some of it is the spirit of Chibiatos. Basically taking control at certain elements, certain points. I think I can use these 2 points to pump this up back to 8. Yeah, I can. Cool. So that is a power level 8, 120 power points. Shadow Manipulating Assassin. Complications. She has a responsibility to Chibiabos and to the Nagamo tribe. And... I don't know. What's another good complication for this character? Shadow Control does have a lot of interesting opportunities for potential complications. We want to say that she has a she has a weakness to bright lights, or her powers don't work when in bright lights. I think that's a good complication. Is it darkness powers or shadow power? Darkness powers. Here we go. Darkness complications. Page 34 of power profiles. Darkness powers often lead to weaknesses or vulnerabilities, particularly the light effects. In addition to power loss complications, darkness characters may suffer additional degrees of effect from light effects, or be more easily damaged or hindered by them. Yeah, I think her abilities don't work in bright light. So power loss. Betsy's abilities only function or cannot function in sustained bright light. So anything like a floodlight or sunlight, anything like that, she is robbed of her blessings of Chibiados, which means that she goes back down to basically being a power level 0 character. So yeah, that's rough. If that's going to happen, I want to make sure that Betsy gets a hero point for that. And there's an easily identifiable way to get her out of that situation. And then she has a responsibility complication. Betsy is a member of the Nagamo tribe, a First Nations member of the Nagamo tribe and the current Shadow Wolf. She is beholden to protect the land. Lake Ohanzi, and to ensure the dead remain, and to carry out Chibiados' will, whatever that may be. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, Nate. That was probably loud. My bad. Headphone warning. I forgot my my keyboard here goes clicky-clack because it makes me happy. All right, so that is Betsy all done. I'll go in and finish her personal stuff later, but that brings us to a PDF of the character. So save PDF. Hero Lab, portfolios. 2023 one-shots, Origins 23, Dragon Quest. Then Hero Lab pops up a really pretty character sheet. Let me grab that real quick. Yeah. Here's the character sheet that the player will receive, because I don't think I'm going to have time to do a fancy bespoke character sheet, just with all the work I have to do. I've got a lot of fun Adam West Batman villains to make for my Suicide Squad game. I'm really excited about. I picked out Joker, of course, Riddler, Frank Gorshin, Penguin, Eartha Kitt, Catwoman, Egghead, King Tut, the Siren, and Dr. Cassandra. So those are some deep cuts, but they're going to be a lot of fun for sure. Yeah, and that's Betsy. She's going to have a really fun time hanging out with Morgan, who's the undead student and the in the party. This art was done by my friend Cody Conyers for our stream that dealt with the students at Parkhurst Manor. But Morgan here is a bit of a brawler, a bit of a team player, and she does have some healing abilities as well, so she's kind of fun. She's got corrosive goo as a zombie trick. She can mimic physical traits on people. She does have rolling eyes and ears to basically scry up to half a mile away. She's got shambling limbs that allow her to do all sorts of fun and horrible movement abilities. She's real fun and gross. And she's got a baseball bat, so yeah. But yeah, I think without further ado, that's probably going to be our show this evening. Thank you for spending time with me, talking all about how to have smaller parties and for hanging out for a bit of impromptu character design. That was a lot of fun. Again, our next session will be on August 8th, which is the week after Gen Con. So I'll be back to talk all about Gen Con. And we need a topic. I wrote down, was it a Google Doc last time? I came up with a list of topics. Let's pick one so I know what we're going to be talking about. Maybe it was a Google Sheet. Let me check that. I really like these streams, though. I hope that they are valuable to you all as an audience. Let's see here. We've got a couple of good, interesting topics. We've got free range versus railroad. We've got challenge scenes, roleplay scenes, investigation scenes. In media res. In media res is one of my favorite adventure starts. You know what? I think that falls into. You know what? We're going to talk about pacing. That's what we're going to talk about. That's one of the things that I think every GM should focus on. And pacing starts with a good intro and continuing to control the tempo of the adventure. So. And we'll incorporate some of the narration requests that I had last week during our planning discussion. So, narration and pacing, I think, is what we're going to call next week's episode. So, we'll probably build an adventure together dealing with the issues of pacing and narration. So, that's going to be on August 8th. As for things around the network, or things around Green Ronin, like I said, we're getting ready for Gen Con. It's going to be a big event. Our Mutants and Masterminds Kickstarter reprints will be available at Gen Con, as well as the new Astonishing Adventures Assembled. So if you are at the convention, please come on down to the booth, pick up your copy, and I'll be there mostly in the afternoon. I'm running events in the morning, and then I'll be at the booth in the afternoon. So please feel free to come down and say hi. And I am perfectly happy to talk M&M. Just to chat, just to hang out, whatever you want to do, I'm here and at your disposal. Next Monday, we do have Mutants and Masterminds Monday. What are we talking about? Probably something fun. Mutants and Masterminds Monday, non-combat obstacles. That's going to be a ton of fun. How to challenge your players without throwing things at them to fight them. So that'll be in our regularly scheduled time. You'll be hanging out with me and Steve and Disembodied Troy. Thursday, of course, is coming up on Thursday. And if you have not already, please head over to the Mutants and Masterminds Patreon at patreon.com/Mutants and Masterminds, where you can sign up for all sorts of fun extra events. Right now, I believe we have voting going on for the second one of the M&M mix-ups, which is Steve's fun. Yeah, ranked choice voting is open now. We're leaving it open for 2 weeks, so next week will be the second week of voting. So get in, make sure you make your choices. Steve put together a wonderful group of villain teams to be the antagonists, and I want you guys to make life as hard for him as you made it for me, because I love him and he deserves that. But yeah, mutantsmasterminds.com/ or patreon.com/Mutants and Masterminds. That is where you can go to find all sorts of fun extra content. We shared recently the new revised healing and regeneration rules that are going to be in the Valiant Adventures rulebook. Yeah, so head over there. You can be a part of all the fun happenings. But until next time, thank you for hanging out with me here on the Joy of Game Mastering. If you need anything at all, please head over to alexanderwrites.com. You can follow up with all my things over there. And if you are not doing anything tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are having the Freedomly Dark in the Multiverse of the Master Mage at 7 p.m. over at twitch.tv/Untold Stories Project. Until next time, thank you again for trusting me to show you a little bit of the joy of game mastering. I'll see you next time. Maybe. I think I broke it. There we go. All right. Thank you again, everybody. I'll see you next time.